You thought it was passion. You mistook their hands on you for desire, their urgency for love, their performance for connection. But what you actually experienced was something far colder, objectification disguised as intimacy. They didn't see you. They saw a doll, perfectly posed, silent, compliant, existing only to reflect their fantasy back at them. This isn't love. It's the doll syndrome. And today, we expose the chilling truth. Why narcissists treat you like an object during intimacy, not because you're unworthy, but because they're incapable of seeing you as human. Picture this. You're in the dark, skin on skin, breath sinking, but you feel nothing but absence. Not anger. Not coldness. Just void. Because in that moment, you weren't a person. You were a prop in their private theater. A beautifully crafted doll they dressed in your skin, moved with your limbs, voiced with your sighs, but never once asked, "Who are you?" That's the horror of the doll syndrome. You're present, but erased. Seen, but invisible. Touched, but untouched. Why does this haunt you long after they are gone? Because objectification doesn't leave bruises, it leaves ghosts. The ghost of your voice when you stayed silent to keep them happy. The ghost of your boundaries when you let them cross to feel chosen. The ghost of your autonomy when you surrendered just to be held. You weren't loved. You were posed. And dolls don't get to say no. You weren't picked for your soul. You were selected for your silence. Your empathy made you the perfect canvas, soft enough to mold, quiet enough to never disrupt their narrative. They didn't want your truth. They wanted your compliance. And intimacy became the ultimate stage where your body performed devotion while your spirit slowly disappeared behind glass eyes and stitched smiles. This isn't about sex. It's about control. About reducing a living, breathing human to a thing that exists only to serve their ego. A doll doesn't argue. A doll doesn't need. A doll doesn't leave. And that's exactly what they needed. A partner who wouldn't threaten the illusion that they are flawless, powerful, and forever in command. You weren't cherished. You were curated. That intimacy you shared? It was one-sided choreography. Every touch, every glance, every whispered word was designed to elicit one response. Awe. Not connection. Not vulnerability. Awe. Because as long as you looked at them like they hung the moon, they didn't have to face the terrifying truth. They are just human. And humanity terrifies them more than loneliness ever could. You felt used, but couldn't name how. Because the doll syndrome doesn't shout, it whispers. It lives in the spaces between words. The way they never asked how you felt after, the way your pleasure was secondary to their performance, the way your body was arranged just so, for their satisfaction, not your shared joy. You weren't a lover. You were a mannequin in their museum of conquests. This video isn't here to shame you. It's here to liberate you. To reframe every confusing night, every hollow morning after, every time you wondered, was I just a body to them? Yes. But not because you failed. Because they lacked the capacity to see beyond their own reflection. And that failure was never yours to carry. The most devastating lie they sold you? That your surrender was love. But love doesn't require you to disappear. Love doesn't pose you like a doll and call it passion. Real intimacy is messy, reciprocal, and full of questions, not silent obedience and flawless performance. You deserved presence, not puppetry. So let's pull back the curtain on the doll syndrome, the silent epidemic of being loved as an object, not a person. Because once you see the strings, you can cut them. And your awakening begins the moment you realize, dolls don't live. But you? You were born to be fully, fiercely, unapologetically human. At the core of the doll syndrome lies a terrifying truth. The narcissist cannot tolerate a partner with a will of their own. Your autonomy threatens their illusion of control. So they reduce you, subtly, systematically, to an object, predictable, silent, and always available. Your body becomes their safe space not because they love you, but because you don't challenge them. Dolls don't have needs. Dolls don't set boundaries. Dolls don't leave. Their psychology is built on fragility masked as grandiosity. To let you be fully human, to let you have desires, moods, boundaries, would force them to confront their own inadequacy. So they freeze you in a pose, the perfect lover, the devoted partner, the silent admirer. Not because you're perfect, but because perfection is controllable. And control is their oxygen. Intimacy, to them, is not merging, it's domination disguised as closeness. They don't want to know your inner world. They want to stage it. Your body is the set, your reactions the script, their ego the director. And if you deviate from the role, if you express a need, a doubt, a hunger of your own, they panic. Because a living partner cannot be directed. Only a doll can. They fear true reciprocity like death. Because reciprocity demands equality. And equality shatters their narrative of superiority. So they keep intimacy just uneven enough. You give more, feel more, risk more. They take, perform, and withdraw. Your body becomes the altar where their ego is fed, while your humanity is quietly erased, not through cruelty, but through omission. This is why they escalate physical closeness early. Speed bypasses discernment. If they can get your body aligned before your mind questions, you're trapped in a loop where sensation overrides suspicion. You mistake urgency for devotion, intensity for depth. And while you're lost in the feeling, they are securing another compliant figure for their private collection. Their obsession isn't with you, it's with the version of you that never talks back. The version that smiles when touched, never asks for more, never disrupts the fantasy. That version doesn't exist. But they'll punish the real you for failing to become it. Because the real you is unpredictable. The real you has a soul. And souls can't be posed. They cannot tolerate stillness with a real person. Stillness demands presence. Presence demands vulnerability. And vulnerability is the one thing their entire identity was built to avoid. So they fill every quiet moment with performance, not to connect, but to drown out the echo of their own emptiness. Your body becomes their noise-canceling headphones. Your physical presence is their anti-anxiety ritual. Not because they are bonded to you, but because you stabilize the fiction they live inside. Like any addict, they'll manipulate, charm, or guilt-trip to keep you close, not out of love, but out of survival. They don't see your exhaustion. They only see the opening you create when you pull away. And to them, that opening isn't self-care, it's betrayal. This isn't malice, it's trauma wearing a crown of control. Their behavior was forged in childhood, where their worth was tied to performance, not personhood. But understanding their wound doesn't obligate you to bleed for it. You were never meant to be their cure. You were meant to be your own sanctuary. And the moment you realize your body belongs to you, not to their psychological hunger, you reclaim the most sacred ground, your sovereignty. So remember, when they hold you, they're not holding you. They're holding onto the fantasy that they matter. And that fantasy requires your silence, your stillness, your surrender. But you don't owe your body to someone's existential hunger. Your skin is not a bargaining chip. Your warmth is not a tool. And your willingness to be close should never be weaponized to feed a void that was never yours to fill. The turning point arrives not with a scream, but with a single, quiet act of humanity. Maybe you voiced a need during intimacy. Maybe you said, I want to be seen, not just used. And in that instant, her system crashes. Because you've disrupted the sacred illusion, the doll has spoken. And a speaking doll is no longer a doll. It's a person. And persons threaten the very foundation of her false self. Watch how quickly passion curdles into punishment. One day you're her perfect muse, the next you're too demanding, too emotional, or ruining the moment. Why? Because you stopped being an object and became a subject. And subjects have agency. Subjects ask questions. Subjects threaten the narrative. So she retaliates, not with honesty, but with distortion. She'll gaslight you into believing your desire for reciprocity is emotional greed. Your request for presence is neediness. Your need for safety is weakness. All while she continues to expect your body as tribute, without ever acknowledging the toll it takes on your spirit. She doesn't want to lose you. She wants to lose your humanity. This is the twist. Her love wasn't lost. It never existed. What vanished was your usefulness as a silent object. The moment you sought emotional reciprocity, you became a liability. Because real intimacy would require her to be vulnerable, and vulnerability is the one thing her entire identity was built to avoid. So she withdraws not because she stopped wanting you, but because you stopped being useful. She'll hoover you with sudden bursts of vulnerability, a tear, a confession, a late-night message saying, "I miss how easy it was with you." But don't mistake this for growth. It's recalibration. She's testing if your body is still available to plug the leak in her self-image. This isn't healing. It's supply maintenance. And you're not being invited back into her heart, you're being auditioned again as her compliant doll. Don't confuse her panic for remorse. Her fear isn't about hurting you, it's about losing access to your silence. You're not a person to her in that moment. You're a resource she's scrambling to reclaim. And the more you resist, the more erratic she becomes, love-bombing, smearing, triangulating, because your absence isn't just silence. It's proof that her performance isn't enough. This is where real power shifts, not with a fight, but with presence. The day you stop offering your body as a silent prop. The day you realize your voice is sacred, not a disruption, but a declaration. You don't have to explain. You don't have to justify. You simply exist, fully, loudly, unapologetically. And in that existence, you become untouchable. She'll rage. She'll smear your name. She'll claim you used her or played games. But projection is her last defense. Because deep down, she knows, she used you. And your calm humanity is the first honest thing you've ever given her, and it terrifies her more than any confrontation ever could. You are no longer her doll. You are your own sovereign. And that shift, from object to authority, sends seismic waves through her fragile ecosystem. Because a self-possessed you cannot be manipulated. A grounded you cannot be gaslit. And a speaking you, no longer performing silence, forces her to hear the one sound she spent a lifetime drowning out, the hollow echo of her own emptiness. This turning point isn't just your liberation. It's her reckoning. For the first time, she must face the truth. She can mimic love, but she cannot create it. And without someone to pose as her perfect object, she is nothing but static in the dark, a ghost haunting a body that never learned how to feel. Now, observe the collapse. Without your silent compliance, her charisma dulls. Her stories lose luster. New targets sense the hunger beneath the polish, the subtle panic when admiration isn't instant. Because authenticity can't be faked forever. And you were the last great illusion that held her facade together. She'll cycle faster, jumping from body to body, conquest to conquest, chasing the high of silent surrender you once gave her. But it's never the same. Because you weren't just another source. You were the one who saw glimpses of her humanity and still stayed, until you realized staying was self-annihilation. Her social mask begins to slip. Friends notice the pattern, the sudden devaluation, the smear campaigns, the way she discards people the moment they start speaking their truth. Lovers sense the emptiness behind the passion, the mechanical nature of her touch, the absence of true presence. Internally, she's in free fall. No amount of silent compliance silences the voice that whispers, "You're empty." The void you once masked with your stillness is now roaring. Because the void isn't about sex, it's about self. And she still has no answer to the question that haunts her every night: who am I when no one is posing for me? She'll rewrite history, claiming you were toxic, manipulative, or emotionally unstable. Not because it's true, but because your truth exposes her fraud. If she can destroy your credibility, she can restore her illusion of superiority. It's not about justice. It's about survival. But truth is louder than her lies. Every survivor who walks away chips away at her facade. Every boundary you set becomes a crack in her armor. And slowly, the world stops feeding her and starts seeing her. Not as the enigmatic goddess she pretends to be, but as the emotionally stunted predator she's always been. Her collapse isn't dramatic. It's quiet. A slow fade into irrelevance as people choose authenticity over performance. As lovers choose presence over control. As friends choose consistency over chaos. The market for her illusion dries up, because the truth is finally trending. She'll never understand why you left. Because in her narrative, she gave you everything. Passion, attention, intimacy. But you didn't want her spectacle. You wanted safety. You wanted someone who could hold you without needing to pose you. Someone whose love didn't vanish the moment you asked for consistency. Her tragedy is not yours to carry. Let her spiral in the silence she created. Let her face the mirror without your reflection. Because your freedom begins the moment you stop being the answer to her existential crisis. You were never responsible for filling her void. You were only ever responsible for protecting your light. And as she searches desperately for her next silent doll, recycling your lines, mimicking your tenderness, using your vulnerability as a blueprint for her next conquest, you're doing something radical, rebuilding yourself. Not for an audience. Not for validation. But because you finally believe you are worth more than silence. Here is the final truth. Your body was never hers to pose. It was yours to protect, to honor, to share only with those who see your soul, not just your stillness. She doesn't love bodies. She leases them. And the rent is always paid in your voice. But the lease is expired. You are not her property. You never were. You were a guest in your own life, until now. Real love doesn't demand silence. It invites voice. It doesn't drain your energy, it returns it, multiplied. It doesn't use your body to hide from emptiness, it meets you in your fullness, scars and all, and says, I'm here, not to pose you, but to walk beside you. Healing begins when you stop apologizing for having needs. When you stop justifying your desire for reciprocity. When you realize that someone who treats your body as a prop will never treat your heart as a treasure. You were not broken because she used you. You were brilliant because you survived, and wiser because you walked away. You are not damaged goods. You are a reclaimed sanctuary. Every time you speak your truth, you rebuild a wall around your inner temple. Every time you choose presence over performance, you honor the truth that your worth was never up for negotiation. Let her call you difficult. What she really means is, you're no longer feeding me. And that's not a flaw, it's your freedom. Let her hunger remain her prison. You are free to love someone who doesn't need to silence you to feel whole. Someone whose touch doesn't leave you emptier, but fuller, calmer, more yourself. Someone who doesn't see your body as proof of their power, but as a sacred part of your humanity. Every time you choose yourself over her craving, you reclaim a piece of your power. Every no is a resurrection. Every boundary is a declaration. I am not here to be posed. I am here to stand. You are not selfish for protecting your energy. You are sovereign. And sovereignty terrifies narcissists because it exposes the lie they've sold the world, that they are powerful. One day, you'll lie beside someone who holds you without needing to direct you. Who sees your body not as a trophy, but as a testament to your resilience. Who doesn't flinch when you speak your truth, but leans in closer. And in that moment, you'll finally understand what real intimacy feels like, not control, but trust. Not performance, but presence. Not silence, but mutual voice. You were never the problem. You were the mirror that showed her emptiness, and she broke the glass rather than face the truth. But you? You survived the shattering. And from those shards, you didn't just rebuild, you evolved. You transformed pain into clarity, betrayal into boundaries, confusion into conviction. Your future belongs to someone who doesn't just want your warmth, but protects your flame. Who doesn't just admire your body, but defends your dignity. Who knows that love isn't taken through silence. It's given, and only when both souls are fully present, fully free. Your body is not a prop. It is a revelation. And the moment you stop letting her pose you for her ego, you finally come home, to yourself. Not as a victim. Not as a survivor. But as a sovereign being who knows, love should never cost you your voice. And from this day forward, your body will only ever be shared with those who bring not control, but harmony. Not silence, but song. Not illusion, but truth. Because you are not here to be a doll. You are here to live. Fully. Finally. Free.